Hold on. Let me get this right. Let me clear my ear. Let me clear my thoughts. What the hell are we talking about? Ravens about a possibility of letting go of Lamar. Look, okay, I I understand this season not didn't go as well as planned. There's talks about the coach, but really we're at the point where Lamar is the solution by being traded. I was like, look, I don't know if this is. I was like, this could just be rumors, could be nothing at this point. I was like, I only really heard about it on Get Up and stuff like that. But the speculation with 2 years remaining on the contract, that's like, hey, is there a possibility this guy might get traded? Now, one is I think a lot of us could agree that that's probably really stupid, really dumb. I was like, they try to make a case, and I was like, I'm not saying there's no case for it or nothing like that. There's a case to look. I was like, there's possibility of talking about Joe Burrow. There's a case for it, but it's sort of different than the Joe Burrow thing because that is basically coming off of his own like what we're reading in to be his desire or his. I was like going around, beating around the bush kind of way of describing how he feels about playing with the Bengals. So that's all due to what he's doing. This isn't Lamar saying, "Oh, in some form of way, the organization, the city, the town, the team, lack of this, lack of that." There's nothing like this, like it is with the bank or with Joe Burrow situation, and I'm just like, when I was like, why, what is it about Lamar in this sort of situation? Just because I'm like, this doesn't happen to any of the other tier quarterbacks. It doesn't happen to a two-time MVP. It doesn't happen to a guy that basically wins that division like several years straight. I think it's been like 7 or 8 or whatever. Basically, ever since he's been there. A winning record. I was like, yes, has his team faltered in the playoffs? Sure, but the only people to win in that whole thing has either been Brady or Mahomes. So it's not like there's been a plethora of people being chomping at the bit. I mean, they're chomping at the bit and actually being able to succeed there. It's been the same two people. So, and I was like, oh my bad, Joe Burrow the 1 year. So I just don't know when we see this thing about such a decorative type of player because we sort of had this several years ago when this contract was up. And yeah, sure, you could make the case that nobody wants to give him a new contract and 2 first-round picks. Cool, you got me there. All right. Except for ain't this the same damn boat? Except for everybody's like, oh, basically he's a restricted free agent. You're basically doing the contract for Baltimore, and why would you want to screw over Baltimore? And it's like, why wouldn't you want to screw over Baltimore? Like the whole idea of like, oh, we don't want to give him a high enough contract that that Baltimore basically matches it, because what? These other contract with these other quarterbacks of lower, stature are signing high contracts that basically is putting you in the same situation that you would be there. So that never made sense. But here, you're in the same boat. I was like, you're probably going to have to trade for Lamar, which means draft capital, and give him a new contract. So that's why I don't understand this at all of any team that will be sniffing around or thinking about this whole thing. That's why I think the rumor is sort of malarkey in this whole thing. But the fact that it's even being brought up, to me, thinks that there had to be some talk. There had to be some whispers. There had to be something that there's a little smoke. There got to be a little bit of fire, because this wasn't somebody just being like, oh, if I was this, if I was doing that. No, this is something with like 2 years to go, that if this is already being smelt about it, then it's already about to be, something that's going to be created or something that's going to. I just don't. So, but I was like, going back to the main point. What is the reason for this? What is the reason for this? Because I'm like, nobody says it's about Mahomes. And granted, Mahomes got the hardware. He got the MVP. He got the Super Bowls. I was like, he's been able to do it with with high-end offense, with low-end offense. He's been able to do it with it all. This isn't talked about at all with Josh Allen. And I was like, granted, I was like, Josh Allen got the biggest amount of people who create excuses and stuff. But where you want to talk about I was like high-end roster, low-end roster. I was like good defense, bad defense. No, I was like, obviously, Josh Allen isn't the problem. I was like, after they weathered the storm in his first 2 years, he had to be the problem. But Lamar hasn't been the problem. I was like, has he been a part of it? I was like, sure, you could point to the injuries of like, I was like, this year. Last year, he was pretty much fine. And the year before that, and as you could sort of say, that was sort of doing the whole contract thing like that year and the year before that. Okay, I was like, he's nicked up, but I was like, he's only really had 2 really like missing seasons. That was his contract year, and that was basically this year. So, but I was like, the team basically wins. And if you want to say he's had the better roster of the premier quarterbacks, I'll sort of give you that one. I think that he masked a lot of stuff, and I think you've seen that this year, where it's like, okay, cool. The team that everybody had was like, it got the top talent, all this other stuff, couldn't get nothing done with Cooper Rush. Now, granted, Tyler Huntley came in, played a lot better, and when he been the backup for the team has been pretty much capable, of being able to get by in his absence. But when Cooper Rush was there, it was terrible. So you can't also tell me, and how everybody was like, if you remove this quarterback from this team, what? They'll be sorry, just like the Ravens will pretty much be sorry. Would they be able to get by enough with their defense? Yeah, but their defense wasn't playing good majority of this year, and even as of late, they have played better, but they are still getting their ass beat in a lot of spots that you are dependent on a top-level quarterback. That Lamar been banged up this year and hadn't been doing that. I haven't been able to do it that well this year. That in a way that would mask a lot of that stuff. But, and I was like, there'll be a video later on that I'm gonna do with all the quarterbacks, excluding really Burrow. But the fact that I was like him, Derrick Henry at the height of his powers, which hadn't also been this year either with his fumbles and stuff. He's still been really good. But I'm like, it's not like Bateman is over here killing it or whatever, crushing it. You just got Hopkins, who is basically a shell of himself and should be basically your third receiver if you have other top receivers. And I was like, Zay Flowers, Flowers is cold. I was like, but I think it's saying like he's a number 1 or something like that. In the same, I was like, or saying he's not the same as Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's not that type of number 1 from the slot. But I was like, he's a good option. Mark Andrews, I was like, they did give him an extension, but he hasn't been Mark Andrews, for the last couple years or whatever. He's still been good. Likely, I feel like all the hype that was with him this year coming in with the injury hasn't really been there. And look, the coordinator and the calling and stuff like that, while it has broken Lamar to another height, they still do something. They do some stuff weird. So that's why I'm like, why is it that I was like, Lamar is over here already being talked about in things or whatever. I was like, sure, he could be a part of the problem just because if your quarterback ain't playing well, he's a part of the problem because he got to be the solution. But why is it that Lamar, who's been at the top, when you name the top quarterbacks in the league, I don't care what you really say, he's in the top 3. I was like, and then after that, you're playing who you sort of like. It's mostly Burrow, Herbert, whatever after that. And I was like, Herbert, also something about, that's different. That's a different game. I'm about to go into a different rant. Point being, Ravens, cool. You get those draft picks, and what? You build up a team that, cool. If you hit on those picks, you get more, get more line help. You get a pass rusher. Cool, now you're going to have to find a quarterback that you think can be just as good as what you had. And maybe the idea is that if we hit so much around that whoever we get at quarterback will be decent enough or good enough that with the rest of the pieces we'll be able to excel. And sure, that's a good thought. There's a bunch of quarterbacks in the league right now that are good, and their pieces are making them elevate to an even higher level. But even with that, this is a team that's like, do you really want to get a rookie right now? And I was like, hey, rookie to coming in, basically playing right away. But now we see more than ever that you're getting really big projects that is like you going and be making your decision on in basically 2 years. Look, everybody's already talking about Penix was basically a year and a half worth of games. Caleb just started getting the people off of his back. I was like, JJ McCarthy's under fire. Even Jackson Dart is starting to get. I was like, it's getting stuff. Bo Nix is still ain't really clear. Trevor Lawrence is still fighting whatever it was. I was like, he's had like 3 good games where they really don't put it together, but he's still fighting out. So, do you really want to go in that where basically Lamar's only thing is getting to a Super Bowl? I mean, all right, we say can he get to the AFC Championship game? But that's his goalpost is championship, pretty much. And you can only say that about 4 quarterbacks. He's one of the 4. So why would you want to trade one of the 4 quarterbacks that you immediately put the pressure of Super Bowl on their back? That's insane to me. And also too, we're going to see with Josh Allen this year if he's able to get to the mountaintop when none of the obstacles are in the way. Going to saying that, hey, look, he could be like the return of what we've seen of Phillip Rivers that just never was able to get there no matter how good he was. The team around him that was as good. Or he could be Peyton Manning that at some point, sometime, was able to break through. Peyton Manning, who had hella offenses. I was like, people criticize the defense, and I was like, the defenses were. I was like, we're good. The fact that you had to wait for Bob Sanders, one player, and I get it, one player can make a whole team dynamic, but they had 2 great pass rushers. I was like, they had some good linebackers in there and stuff like that. They were good. They just kept getting beat by one team pretty much. I was like, Ravens Steelers in there as well too. So a couple teams, but mainly the Patriots. That he could, I was like, he got enough chance to break through. But do you just want to do that? For all this talk of everybody always talking about you got to get the quarterback right. If you ain't got a quarterback, you can't ever succeed. You can't win the game, and you want to trade a quarterback. That you really don't have no question. This isn't Kyler Murray. This isn't Baker Mayfield. This isn't Bryce Young. I was like, no. I was like, this guy, we're like that people say is a failure because he can't win the Super Bowl. But think about if that's the type of pressure on you, you have to be pretty damn good to have that type of pressure on you. So in a league full of people that's looking for a quarterback, I think it's weird that a team will be trying to get rid of their quarterback. I was like, hey, and it's also weird that this just sort of thing just happens to Lamar out of all people. Just the fact that, like I said, you're not going to say anything about this with Allen, despite him having a crew around him that somehow everybody says sucks, but also he elevates at the same time, but doesn't elevate. Whatever. Burrow, we see how that's going. I get that you're gonna have to pay him like how you do with the Cowboys, but guess what? The Cowboys figured it out. Except for the thing is that the Ravens draft well. They normally pick up free agents pretty decently. The only thing they never seem to get is cornerback is always a wonky piece, but outside of that, they needed a pass rusher. Stick the course. I was like, just stick the course with Lamar. But I will say that coming up with teams that Lamar could go to will be quite fun because we'll see how loyal people are to their quarterbacks if you could get Lamar Jackson on board. And also with those same teams that decided I'm not going to get Lamar Jackson last time, how will they do it now? because once again, it's something about Lamar that people just got a little iffy about. Anyway, do you think the Ravens are just local? And I think they are. Of this even being a thing that's out there, because like I said, this being out there isn't just something that somebody just created. This had to be something that through some way somehow has been talked about enough for you to smell that in the wind, and it smells like a turd in the wind. Anyway, let me know what y'all think. Till then, peace. I'm out.